Okay, so this week I'm just going to share the introduction to my essay or mini reflection. This reflection was from June 2024, and a lot of the starting off points of ceremony I'm still deeply connected to. So, questions that I was with at that point are still the ones that I'm returning to now. And those questions are, what do these technological shifts mean for our relationships, our ability to reflect, and the ways that we learn? And how do these tools shape our capacity for nuance, emotional complexity, and slowness? I understand the excitement around using AI for career growth, productivity, efficiency, goal setting, calendar planning, sort of this like assistant role that it's taken. I still don't think that we're paying enough attention to how these tools are reshaping our relationships with ourselves and with others. I'm constantly witnessing roadblocks between people that I feel like I can always trace back to this desire for control, to see what's underneath or ahead of us before we actually jump into relationships or just risk in our creative life. Unfortunately and fortunately, no matter how hard we try and predict the future, we will really never be able to know what we might gain or what we might lose. But we can be thoughtful about how we make those decisions. There is an allegory that I have been returning to. It's about a group of people standing at the edge of a cliff, contemplating this leap of faith into the unknown. And just before they jump, one of them says, "Wait, let's have a coffee first." And so they sit, and then others come, and more people come. And eventually they build a whole cafe on this cliff's edge, so comfortable and filled with company that they never actually leap at all. And I've been thinking about this a lot. I really don't want us to get stuck there, just sipping coffee and calling it living. While in the water, if we just took that leap of faith together, that's where the real mystery of life is waiting. And it's like so close. And we can really do an incredible job convincing ourselves that we're satisfied, we're happy, this is all that life has to offer us, when we build security, but I think deep down we know that we're missing something. And that's where this internal conflict comes up for so many of us. So my question is, how do we build capacity for the unknown? How do we not know more about what's to come, but know in ourselves that regardless of what happens, we're going to be okay and we're going to be together? I think about this lottery ticket metaphor that I explore in the reflection from June of last year, especially as AI becomes more and more embedded in our lives. Someone brought this up to me and said that I was like a scratch ticket at that time last year. So a scratch ticket promises an escape from hardship, right? Without having to work through it. And most of us don't win the lottery and don't win big on these scratch tickets, but we still buy them and we still hope. I've been wondering a lot, looking back at this reflection, what kind of world we've built that an entire industry exists around that kind of hope. And when it comes to AI, this new shiny pony, are we approaching it any differently? This escape from hardship without having to work through it. I'm really curious about that desire in us. And I want to be clear, I'm not looking to ignore the vast inequalities in labor, wealth, and access that currently exist in our climate. The desire for a better life or a comfortable life shouldn't be a luxury, shouldn't be a privilege. Our basic necessities shouldn't require us to labor to the extent with which we have to now to pay rent, to pay our bills, to support our families. But for the purpose of this piece, I'm really zooming in on the human spirit. And I told a friend the other day that we can't do everything all at once. And this is something that I have to remind myself of every single morning, or else I would get nothing done. I wouldn't prioritize any of the little steps in between that have to take me from here to there. And I hope one thing that people can take from my work is a sense that we do have some capacity, or we can build capacity to make our lives even a little bit better without waiting for institutions to change overnight. And that doesn't mean that institutional change isn't the goal. It just means that if we wait passively, I think we give all of our power away, and it kind of becomes this self-fulfilling prophecy. A professor that I assisted with last year said at the very beginning of the semester, I know that I can't decolonize this whole academic institution, but I can do my best to decolonize this classroom and call out the places where unfair or inequitable and limiting policies exist. Those small actions take us out of this overwhelm and bring us back down to earth and in the space that we're sharing and to what's possible in this moment. They give us our power back in small but really, really meaningful ways. So there's also been a shift in how we see the purposes of relationships. More and more we're told that relationships should serve us. They're meant to only bring pleasure, ease, or validation. People start to be seen as objects and not the complex beings, mirrors, teachers, co-creators that are embedded in our growth, that are required for our growth. When we offload our learning to AI instead of turning to one another, we risk forgetting that relationships are not just sources of comfort, but they're spaces of reciprocal transformation that offer us so much more depth than a definition scraped from the internet. Our lived experiences offer us wisdom that's just flattened when we turn to an AI as opposed to each other. I think people resist relationships because that complexity can often be a bit challenging to navigate. But conflict and complexity isn't always a sign that something is bad. Struggle between us and between people isn't failure. It's often where the deepest meaning can be found when we practice building capacity to sit there in it. As I mentioned with that allegory, meaning isn't built by sitting safely at the edge of a cliff, sipping coffee, and waiting for life to feel pleasurable and perfect. It's built by jumping, by taking the leap again and again into the messy, unfiltered reality of being in relationship with other people. And we might feel, I think, joyful or perfect or easy in that cafe for a little while, but it gets old and we get restless. And I think that that's the thing that people are forgetting a little bit. It's like, okay, we've put the Band-Aid on. What happens when the Band-Aid is trying to fix a broken bone? It does not actually do anything. It aesthetically looks a certain way, but we're just prolonging addressing these issues until later, until it becomes dire, until it becomes something that is a lot harder to address. So here I am grieving the idea that a scratch ticket might solve everything or might be the success or failure of this project. I am finding wisdom in working through the process and through problems with others in my life, in shifting what we value, in asking where and with whom we spend our time. Our lives can look like a series of lottery tickets, but the tickets themselves are besides the point. What matters is the muscle that we build to stay present, because even if there's nothing underneath the ticket, it's still us here having to live our lives. None of us can see the world clearly on our own. Our relationships really are our mirrors and our teachers. And when we offload our learning to AI instead of one another, we really risk reducing people to sources of pleasure rather than recognizing them as ongoing, reciprocal places where we grow and find meaning in this life. And perhaps ongoing, deep, lasting pleasure is found in that complexity and not just on the surface. I really don't want us to be sipping coffee blissfully unaware. I want us to be jumping off the edge into uncertainty, into connection, to explore more of what this life has to offer and be creative with what we find there. So when opportunity knocks or when somebody needs us, we're not wishing that they would just handle it alone. We're not exhausted. We're not dreading being with other people, and we're not abandoning ourselves trying to save them either. I hope that we can be there for each other, holding each other's hands, knowing that relationships are not transactions and they're not zero-sum games. Again, it's not that we need to know what's coming to take that leap. It's just knowing that we have the capacity and the capability to be okay with what we find when we do take that leap. As Audre Lorde says, there's no separate survival. That is how we find our way through, and that's how we continue moving and growing together with a real focus on the process and not measuring ourselves based on unknown outcomes. I hope you enjoy my reflection that will follow below. And until next time.